Welcome to Movie Bear, everybody. This is Dan bringing us in, and we have a hilariously fun, good episode for you. Sitting with me here at the table, I have my usual amazing friends and co-hosts.
How do you know it's hilarious and fun? We haven't done it yet.
We're being troublemakers.
Dear listener, this is Aaron. I'm glad that you're joining us. I am your castor oil trap expert.
Ooh.
I'm Blake, and like before, wink, I'm your dialogue expert.
And everyone, this is Brian, and I'm your visual effects on a low budget.
I like that Brian said
go.
everyone, not just the listeners.
Yeah, I know, because, there are more than just two listeners.
I listen occasionally.
What did we watch? We watched a fun film that was done in black and white.
Indeed.
And low budget.
With almost no dialogue.
Zero. Well, very, very low. Fewer than 12 words, we think. We didn't count them, but I think it's fewer than 12 words.
Yeah, I have no idea.
There was some title
I would
cards.
say far fewer.
Yeah, there were far fewer than 10 words spoken. We had planned on watching this movie a while ago. We just never got around to it. This movie came out in
1920s.
Yes, it looks like it came out in the 1920s, but it actually
was 2022.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, 1922.
We've done all the research on it.
So, dear listener, I just want to be above board and really candid. We watched this, I think, a week ago, and we had technical difficulty with the early recording. So this is the best of our memory a week after.
Yeah.
So really, what you're getting is more value because we've had a chance for this film to percolate
settle
and sit with
and
us.
we've just been thinking about it. It's like an earworm for your mind.
That's right, nonstop.
Brainworm, like our
brain.
Right. Hundreds of beavers. So this is the line
Let me
that
just
I
say
used
real
to
quick,
start.
Aaron tried to cut me off by doing my stupid bit. Now you just made it stronger.
Yes. So it's about a drunken applejack salesman who must go from zero to hero and become North America's greatest fur trapper by defeating hundreds of beavers. Hundreds. So you have this drunk guy who's trying to make alcohol, and he gets shut down because everything gets covered in an avalanche.
Well, no, it gets covered in
fire.
It snows, and then the beavers chew away his still, and it falls over. And then he falls over drunk because he's been drinking applejack all winter.
Well, no, I thought it was a fire that everything destroyed his.
It fell over. They chewed the foundation.
That's right.
They chewed the foundation of.
Yeah, Aaron, beavers aren't fire.
Yeah, it actually gave you a diagram of how to make applejack.
Yes. I would see that band in any basement.
Yes. We knew, again, what we were going to watch. I was at Bridgetown Beer House just prior to us watching it over in the North Mississippi neighborhood.
Why does that sound familiar?
I don't know. We've bought a number of beers
drunk gentleman there named me?
I don't know, but we selected a couple of beers based on just the name and simply because one of the breweries is called Belching Beaver Brewing and has a beaver on the front that looks like one of the characters in the movie.
It really does.
The other is Alpine Terror Dark Lager from Oak Union, which is, they terrorize. It's a vice versa thing. It's like he terrorizes the animals by killing them, and they try to terrorize him back in some way. Mutual destruction.
Yeah, there's a lot of terrorism happening in this movie.
It is. So peanut butter milk stout from Belching Beaver and then Alpine Terror Dark Lager from Oak Union. We'll talk about those in a little bit. So basically we have this low budget independent film that was made for $150,000. Mm-hmm. And it was done, I think Brian had mentioned, over the course of like 2 weeks they shot most of it.
So they shot the entire film in about 22 days, but then they took 2 years in post-production with After Effects, which is a Adobe program to do all the visual effects. And this really was a kind of a passion project of the man who was the main actor and the director who also did all the visual effects and editing and sound design in post-production.
Hey, Brian, please stick to the script we wrote from last episode. You're diverting a lot.
I'm trying to follow the script.
So there was a mix of visual styles here. Yeah. There was a lot of live action, but then I think there was even like some animation or like there were other things here.
There was a lot of animation.
Like an overlay kind of thing. The snow effects when he was trying to stay warm felt very Looney Tunes to me. Like they had the similar thing when they put over the cell animation of just fluffy clouds simulating snow as it blows by.
The gist of this movie is the animals are represented by humans in what you would call mascot outfits. So they're like zip-up onesies with a big head that a mascot would normally wear.
Like pajamas almost.
And they're referred to as mascots in the film in the title
isn't that just a furry?
It is, but it isn't, because furries tend to be a little bit more realistic.
Lifestyle, man.
Furries are a lifestyle, yes.
Sorry, I apologize to you and your lifestyle, Aaron.
These were literally, you could see the zipper on the back, and they made no qualms about cutting it open and pulling fake things out, because there were a number of scenes where there was anatomically incorrect things going on the screen.
It's clear that this is part of the budget or the budgetary constraint that this movie was made with. But I think that
but they really leaned into it as stylistic.
It's charming.
Yeah, they were referring kind of to silent films, but also to Looney Tunes and a couple other things.
It gets very meta.
We'll refer to later.
Well, so I was going to say, it's a little jarring at first, maybe like the first scene or two, where you see these people in like rabbit costumes or dog costumes. Later, there's wolf costumes, and it's clear.
Hey, spoilers!
It is very clear that these are humans in a mascot suit.
And on occasion, the helmets or the hats will even pop off a little bit, and you can see their faces underneath, and you're just like, oh,
and
they
even
don't care.
There's a later animal, no spoilers, but like a later animal, or it's like you see. Thank you, Dan.
Dan will spoil it because Dan doesn't care.
No, there's a horse. There's a horse in
film.
it. There's raccoons, beavers, and horses.
Let's all talk over each other.
And dogs.
Dan's cue to spoil things.
And rabbits.
And rabbits. Lots of rabbits. Rabbits with bile.
So does it bother you guys
for free?
that these are clearly people in animal suits? Because I think it kind of adds some charm to this film, and that like by 5 minutes in, after these characters have been introduced, like you do not mind that you see the zippers on the back. Like
they set up this is the world. Okay, this is the world that the story is told in, and just deal with it.
Yeah,
this feels like the best example of when a studio tells you you can't have. You thought you had like X budget, now you have Y budget, and Y is significantly lower than X. So you have to figure out a way to make your dream happen on a budget, which often leads to a more creative solution. A big budget version that Aaron's going to roll his eyes at. For the first Deadpool movie, the final big gunfight scene, Fox cut a huge budget for a massive gunfight, and right before they shot it, like they said, well, we can't have this. We don't think it's going to work. And we got a much funnier, better choreographed, weird, like more Deadpool style fight scene and a better joke at the end. And for this, I feel like we got, well, you have X budget. We can't have like photorealistic animals running around. We'll have dudes in suits.
There's something, actually, Blake, I'm glad you bring this up because
you're welcome, Aaron.
There's something about, I'm going to get the castor oil out.
I'm the troublemaker expert.
Yeah, you are. There's something that like there can be a divergence of when there's limited resources and a budget is slashed. Sometimes that will make a film worse. But there's other times where it actually makes the film better. And like the Deadpool scene you reference, that's an instance where it's the creativity, the passion, and the skill of the people involved.
It comes down to the people.
It comes out. And I think that's the case here with Hundreds of Beavers also. Like they had limited budget and limited resources. But because of the constraints and because of these very athletic, committed people in bunny suits, it's a better film.
Or not wearing much at all.
So Aaron's saying the people in the animal suits were hot.
They were hot.
I was saying they're athletic. No, they sell the physical comedy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much a Stooges or a Marx Brothers movie, and that's
Charlie Chaplin. I think
very vaudeville style. Like the comedy comes from the physical comedy, the situations. There's nothing. No one's really. It's not at the expense of anyone. It's just a series of farces happening in the. Did they specify in the movie Canadian wilderness?
This must be Canada.
Like general Yukon kind of vibes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's back when Applejack was a thing.
Well, I think they shot it all in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and Wisconsin.
That's right.
Yeah, they're Yoopers there.
Yep.
Oh yeah, a bunch of Yoopers.
So you have all these creatures that are standing around on their hind legs and walking around and doing stuff. And the fight scenes when they're like fighting each other is so comedic. And some of this actually takes place like in the wintertime. And it looks like snow.
That man's not wearing a lot of clothing.
He's not wearing much clothing at all. I'm like, how did he not get frostbite or like get really sick from being
dedication
out there in the snow?
To the art?
Dan, the kids call it being built different.
I guess.
Well, part of this, I think, is this. To me, this movie had so many like video game references. You start out as a really weak character, level 1. You don't have good gear. You don't have a lot of skills. But then, you go out and finally, after a lot of failure and a lot of trying, you learn how to make a fire. And then after learning how to make a fire, then you go out and you get your first beaver. You trap your first beaver.
Well, not even. He traps his first fish.
Yeah.
He starts much lower on the totem pole.
He does. But he works his way up. And then there's a merchant.
And he can trade so many fish for a hook.
A hook.
Yeah.
And then he
And
gets
then he
more
can
fish.
more fish.
And
And
Aaron-
then he can trade it for what?
So I think we're on track. I think
Now you're mentioning how he grinds to get better gear, and then the merchant thing and all that. I'm beginning to see your point.
goes
There's
up to the
also a
merchant,
mini map.
and it's literally there's a map and everything. He has to pick where he goes on the map.
Well,
and
see,
he
the map
changes
part
the
didn't
map.
even click for me as much as just like the merchant was the key thing. Like seeing how you go. Doo-doo-doo-doo.
Yep.
I'm saying I'm agreeing now. Stop
Yeah.
yelling at me. You're looking at me really hard.
No.
Like,
this isn't my encouraging. This is my encouraging dad look.
It's a bad look.
No, I mean, there's the merchant, which actually makes like video game noises as he's selecting what things he wants to buy. But the map also, as he's walking around with this trapping map he's
I
created,
got more just
it was
Looney Tunes
also
from
like
that.
there's like a noise from
I
Super
understand
Mario
that.
Brothers
I get
3.
whether you get where you
Yeah.
get there, but I just saw more like parodies of Indiana Jones when you see the red dot plane flying across the ocean. But then for Looney Tunes, it's bink, bink, bink. I got more of that from it. But
Right.
I think we're both right.
Like the way Bugs Bunny goes to
Albuquerque.
Albuquerque.
You should have
Because
taken,
there's a
you should have taken
scene-
left at Albuquerque, but there's a lot of underground tunneling leading to the
Yes.
bumps of
Yes.
the ground bumping up.
Correct. And then holes to fall into, and then you suddenly appear in another spot. It's just like
frankly, this whole movie just pulls from all of those to make this wonderful product.
So this part of this movie's charm is that it has so many references to other parts of pop
Yeah,
culture.
It's so intelligent. And
Yeah.
I think that can draw just about anyone in, even if they don't get all the references.
I've been telling everyone I know, like no matter age, creed, or whatever they're into, you should watch this.
It's got a universal humor to it. I think like in being
It's
that
inoffensive.
it's done with almost no dialogue. I think like even if you're not like native Canadian speaker, or
Or if you don't speak Beaver
if you don't speak Beaver
or Wolf,
or English. There's a lot here I think that will translate, I guess is what I'm saying. And,
Yeah.
and I think like across demographics.
Stylistically, the whole film is kind of like a silent film. There are inner title cards.
Right.
And there's definitely a lot of sound and sound design and sound effects, but for getting story across that isn't clear by really great visual storytelling, they use title cards from time to time.
yeah.
I mean, most of the sound
and
is
it-
like him grunting, like "Brr."
Yeah, and it leads to kind of a melodramatic feel, which supports the costumes and the video game progression.
Right.
So what other films does this remind you of?
Oh, Looney Tunes back in action, Dan. Come on, I just said Looney Tunes.
Well, so we did watch another movie last year that had almost no dialogue. And it was about a male protagonist trying to reclaim what was his.
Are we talking about Sisu?
Yeah.
Sisu. I mean, that had a lot of
I can
dialogue in it,
because
but-
I picked up what you were putting down immediately. Yeah.
I mean,
I thought
it
you were
didn't take-
talking about Mad God.
no,
Well, that one didn't have a whole lot of
that
words
one-
either.
That
We
one
also-
didn't
That's
have a
what
lot
I'm
of
saying.
words, yeah.
We also what was it? Five Nights at Freddy's, or what was the one that had?
We didn't watch Willy's Wonderland for the podcast. We just watched that for fun.
All right.
That was Nick Cage. didn't say
This is
anything.
now a clip show.
Well,
Yes.
so
Oh,
what
we've done
about
one of those. Hey, dear listeners, go back to when Dan and Randall let me do a clip show episode where we talked about old episodes. It's a fun premise. It's cute.
remember episode 82 when we watched RRR? It was a buddy.
Is it actually 82?
No, I made that up. But
I mean, if it was, that'd be amazing.
but Dan can could put use some producing magic and put in whatever number. Episode number
It's gonna come with Dan going-
420.
Yeah, it's a cut in. I'm not doing this. They just-
Right. But it was a buddy movie, and this also has a buddy movie element too, because there is a senior level trapper
Right.
That the shopkeeper has the hots for.
that he wants to marry his daughter to.
Yeah.
Yes.
He doesn't have the hots directly. He has the hots indirectly via his daughter.
It's pretty straight.
Because
it's very
that
heteronormative
trapper is
viewpoint there. Aaron.
successful.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's incredibly successful. His map's amazing.
Yeah,
And our protagonist gets rid of it.
Santa has a giant sled and a bunch of dogs pulling the sled,
And that is
and a big bag.
it's a metaphor, folks. Read into it. Wink,
No,
wink.
the dogs are hilarious, and I love every scene they're in. Like they
Well, surely they're normal dogs, not in costume, right?
no, the dogs in costume are fantastic and hilarious.
Playing cards around a table multiple times, which is like, oh, I've seen that before.
Bit of trivia: each time they're at the table for whatever reason. I won't say why. They're playing a different card game.
You're right.
Because they're smart.
Okay, well, occasionally for a necessary reason.
But there's also like a reference of like how sometimes dogs are lovable but gross, and there's a couple scenes where the dogs are lovable but gross
and very gross, doing weird things.
Yeah.
Sniffing things they shouldn't.
It's
because that's what dogs do,
and other things.
And
I
other
also
things.
sniff things I shouldn't. Like that food I've been keeping in my fridge for like 3 months.
or the
Correct.
beers that we were going to drink.
I mean,
yeah.
you should sniff that.
Before beer, though, Dan, I was going to ask about Applejack. So part of the premise of this film is we have an Applejack salesman.
Correct.
who
Well, he distills and makes
loses-
Applejack.
We distills
I
it.
think
he
you
makes it,
distill a cereal.
and then he
Applejack's is a cereal,
sell it.
right?
And then he sells it, Blake,
And drinks a lot of it
and
on
drinks
his
a
own.
lot of it on his own. He's enthusiastic about his own product. But I was
Aaron,
gonna
that's
ask,
called an alcoholic.
so Applejack, it comes from like a certain area and a certain climate. Like you have to have apples, and it has to be cold enough.
Correct.
So I believe that the mechanic is that you freeze this and you withdraw water content.
Correct. Whatever
ice.
freezes on top, the ice you pull off, and it makes more concentrated alcohol
Right.
product.
So it's not
Makes
like
a higher proof
apple.
Huh.
So
That's cool.
It's kind of an alternate methodology to like distillation.
yes.
So
So
do you know?
would you start with a cider? Is it
Yeah.
basically a cider,
It's-
and you
Open natural fermented cider that you then just let continually freeze, and you pull off the water.
What is the difference between that and say an apple brandy?
So brandy's actually distilled with heat. It's boiled, and then
Okay.
the condensation is what's pulled off. Versus this is just frozen because it's cold enough. It's in this giant barrel, and they just pull the ice off the top.
And the ice locks the water, but not the alcoholic
Correct, because
content.
alcohol
And
takes
sugars,
colder.
probably.
The sugar and alcohol take a colder temperature to freeze than water.
That's why
does.
you keep vodka in the freezer when you're in
Correct.
college and
Or-
trying to get the party started.
No, you keep Jägermeister in the
Ugh,
freezer.
I'm not drinking
Right?
that garbage.
Oh, no.
Real quick, fermentation for the dum-dums, aka me. What is that process? Just letting it like go bad?
You just let it go bad. It's just going to sit and open, and it's going to. That's the only way you're going to get alcohol out of it is if there
The
is some
yeast
sort of
is
fermentation
eating sugar
And making alcohol.
and poops out alcohol.
Yeah.
So it farts CO2 and poops out.
So my
alcohol.
Chinese food in the back of the fridge could make liquor.
You could make liquor out of a lot of things. You can
You
ferment
could.
pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Aaron's crying right now.
No, I'm just thinking about like, wine making. It's like the natural yeast on the grape skin is eating the sugar in the
I
grapes.
never knew that.
Yeah, there's natural yeast. And that's why, wine traditionally, they didn't add yeast to it. It's just there's natural yeast that grows on the grape that when they smash it all together, it's there and it starts eating the sugar and it creates that
and
alcohol.
the foot fungus from Olga, who's treading
Who's
on the
treading
grape.
on it? Yes,
That-
you have to think about that too.
No, the foot fungus adds
it's
in.
alcohol. It's alcohol. It'll kill the germs, right?
But to go back to the idea,
Every day
like,
after work, I got alcohol in my shoes.
distillation, I'm not an expert, but I thought that alcohol has a lower boiling point than water. And so when you distill, that alcohol will vaporize first.
Correct,
And
but
then
it has a lower freezing temperature than water does.
Well, so that condensation you collect through distillation is a purer alcohol, but
Yes.
it leaves out the impurities, including the fruit from the apple.
So there's a range. There's a time period that when you do that process, there's a sweet spot.
Like the
You
wood
don't wanna
alcohols
do-
up front.
Yeah, you don't want to do it initial. You don't want to pull the stuff off that's initial. You
Yep.
want to wait for that a certain amount of time, whatever it is, and however the big of the batch is.
This week on Movie and a Beer, how to make hooch.
How to make hoochie hoochie. Yes.
You asked your friend Dan to do it. There, lesson served. Let's
and
get
then once
hammered.
you've pulled that, you can continue to do it to get the rest of the ethyl alcohol
right.
to be done, but then you can do it again. You can do it as many times as you want,
Right.
but you have to remember there's a sweet spot in there. It's
in
not
between.
just all of it.
Because the very first alcohols that vaporize are not toxic.
Correct.
And they'll cause damage to you if you drink them.
Correct.
And the very end ones, I think, I don't remember if those are toxic also or if they just taste terrible.
I think they taste bad. I think
Yeah.
when it starts tasting bad is when they stop
Right.
it,
But
or
then-
they just pull off what they've done and then they do the rest and then they mix it back in.
But this is almost
just
a
continue.
safer methodology because you're not, activating those ethyl alcohols or anything.
Correct.
Like here, you're just pulling out the water. And
Freezing
you're leaving-
kills bacteria.
So
as
does
boiling.
alcohol.
Alcohol and boiling kills bacteria. So yes, these are both very sanitary methods for producing alcohol. One just uses cold weather and the other uses heat.
So Brian, stick that cut on your hand in the freezer. You'll be fine.
Or put it into fire.
not?
Put it into fire. Cauterize it. It's fine.
Cauterize it, yeah.
Was
Well, that's
Applejack
a little rushed.
traditionally then from climates that were cold enough that would have regular freezes over the winter?
Yeah.
Like, is that kind of a northern Canadian?
Yeah. Until you put fire to it and then you try to go to the moon with it, but we're not going to go there.
Well, no spoilers, but I will say this movie. There's so many jokes.
Oh yeah, they try to go to the moon. I forgot about that.
Damn it, Blake. Our listeners are gonna. I highly
our
encourage.
3 listeners are gonna be pissed off.
No, our 2,000 listeners are gonna be pissed off. I highly encourage all of them to see
Without
this film.
context.
By the time this gets to 2000,
He
they'll
hasn't
have seen
spoiled
the movie.
anything.
But I also say too, let's not spoil this movie because
spoil this wine and became a ferment.
It is a treasure. This movie is a treasure.
It is very nice.
Absolutely recommend.
I don't think this movie could have been made with a different kind of animal, because there's so many jokes about beavers being engineers and beavers building things.
Fun facts about beavers: their front teeth never stop growing, similar to hamsters.
They have to chew.
have to keep chewing, or their teeth will just grow into their chins and eventually puncture their skin and they'll die.
Yes.
But like nutria and rats, I think
Yeah.
are the same way too.
They have to keep
keep
eating.
chewing.
bunnies.
Yeah,
Bunnies are the same. Yeah, a lot of those animals,
those,
you just have to. They just have to keep doing
Not rodent, but like it's a certain kind of mammal subspecies or genus. But with beavers, I think you're right. That's
So,
the perfect animal. They have some raccoons, but they're treated like little monsters that they are. But I love them so much.
They are monsters.
But they eat rabbits. In the movie, the hierarchy of food is weird.
It is weird.
Like rabbits eat carrots, raccoons eat rabbits. Raccoons are bait for something else. No, he sells them for something.
The beavers eat poop with castor oil poured
That's
over it.
right.
Rabbit castor oil.
Yeah.
Wolves are involved at some point. I won't spoil that. 'Cause I can't remember it.
The wolves are the bad ones. If there's anything bad,
man's a real monster. Dan.
So here's the thing: is the beavers aren't the enemy. The beavers do what the beavers do. Beavers are natural creatures. They're just taking what resources are available to them and doing what they're going to do.
Who naturally build giant
Spaceships.
But our protagonist is also just naturally doing what he's going to do too. Like there is the
Suffering
merchant's
from
daughter.
his-
They took his ability to be an alcoholic away from him, and he got really mad and started trapping and getting back.
Well,
to them.
he needed another job.
Yeah.
They
Correct.
took his job away. He has to find a new job. It happens to be fur trapping.
For trapping.
Yes.
But
I like
also,
how you look at it, Brian, but I'm seeing it more how Dan saw it, where he just loved getting drunk and now his alcohol's gone.
Yeah,
Well-
and he had to do something.
But he has a different goal now of winning the merchant's daughter, and there's a certain
What a beauty.
level of prosperity or competence or achievement he needs to.
He figures out I have to be able to do what the older guy was doing. The senior, I have to
Trapper.
learn. I have to use his methods.
I have
he
to
was
level
taught.
up video games.
Yes, to level
Points of
up
Aaron.
and start doing them on his own. We're not going to say why. It's really sad.
So this
But
is a survival movie. It's a comedy.
It's Rust the movie.
It's slapstick and episodic.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
I think. How else would you describe it?
This could be filmed.
parts?
This could be filmed. Not filmed. This could be aired on a cable channel and broken up over the course of several commercials, and it still makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't.
If they put him in the right
the
spots.
continuity is fairly easy to follow. He doesn't necessarily flash back a whole lot. There isn't really much of that done. That's one of the guises that's typically done in a lot of movies nowadays. He doesn't really do that a whole lot.
It's more so it's used as like a thought balloon to figure out how do I do this thing.
I'm looking at the map
Yeah,
and
that's
we're
part of the-
changing the map
Well,
again. And
Something we talked about was they used quite a lot of montages in this.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
To kind of move through,
Yeah.
time and him getting more skillful and some other things that happen.
he makes
A lot
some
of
traps that create a
montages.
lot of air, and then there's like you're going to fly through the air towards the trap, and then you're going to fly through the air to
I
the other
appreciate
trap.
that
and
there
then
are
fly through the
points
air towards
where
that trap, and
it
yeah.
might just be me because I wasn't following directly because I don't watch a lot of movies like this. I don't think a lot of people do. But I saw him set some traps up and thought, okay, that's kind of funny. I guess I'm sure it'll work out, but I can't imagine how. And then you see it in action, like a Rube Goldberg machine, and you go, that's really funny. Okay, yeah, this is great. Good for him.
I do want to say, when we first were queuing this up or teeing it off, I did say, expect it to start slowly. The first 20 minutes, it takes some time. But
That was your initial description for us.
The payoff is absolutely worth it. And so, dear listener, I'd say, if you have a policy where you give a movie 5 or 10 minutes, please do yourself a favor.
We call that, on the podcast, we call that the Dan method.
Yes.
Give yourself do yourself a
15 minutes and
favor.
done.
20 minutes for this movie, because if you were judging it by the first 5 or 10 minutes, you're going to sell it short, and it would be a shame if you did that.
So instead of the Dan method, do an Aaron. Give it 20.
Give it 20.
Well, and another piece of trivia: the first 20 to 25 minutes until the opening credits start
title,
was actually a pitch film that the two creators did on their own to launch a Kickstarter for the rest of the movie.
Oh, cool.
So they pooled whatever $5,000 or $10,000 together and turned it into 150, which they turned into a feature film, which is really rare.
Right.
Most feature films now, even a low budget one, are several $1 million.
I could see that because the opening credits and the first couple of scenes do feel
like almost a separate movie.
It's kind of, they rely more on like when you have like animation in the scene or like a background CGI thing.
More stuff he could do at home with still images.
Exactly. There's a lot more still image or like two image kind of back and forth.
Monty Python type animation.
Yeah, of like lumberjacks in two different positions waving mugs going, we love Applejack while he's singing the song.
So there's a lot of that. A still image taken from a frame and then duplicated and then moved around the screen. And it's very Monty Python-esque. If you've ever seen like the opening credits for any of the Monty Python movies or the TV show, it's very similar to that. But this is, again, all in black and white. The film grain and snow, which is continually falling throughout pretty much the whole film, is all
that's all visually added. Yeah,
visually added later on. And I would say they did a really amazing job with the few shots and some of the other, I guess you'd say, trivia I read about this was there was only not necessarily more than 6 people in the shot at any given time, and the rest is just digitally, duplicated and put in there to make it look
cloned images. Over and over and over again.
Of them moving and just it's simple animation.
There were scenes towards the end where there were perhaps thousands of beavers.
But the movie says hundreds of beavers have been overpromised.
It under-promises as over-delivers.
Well, I don't want that many beavers. I wanted hundreds. I was expecting hundreds.
Dear listener, I don't know if we're really articulating this well, but we all really enjoyed this film.
It was fun.
Yes, go see this film.
Movie was
great.
All right. Was there criticisms?
It ended.
Okay.
There was a few moments
here we go
where no I would say that there's not necessarily a continuity issue. It's just as someone who's been in the outdoors when it's snowing, he's sitting there in his underwear on a tree limb, like way up in the air, waiting for something to happen, and I'm like, and if it's snowing out.
So you wanted it to be more realistic,
just
with dudes in mascot costumes?
No, it's just. I was gonna say from a believability standpoint, if you can say
and the fish were sock puppets.
Yes, they were.
They were knitted.
Crocheted. They were knitted fish that were adorable looking. Who would just like open their mouth and then kind of move a little bit,
look a little sad. Like
stop.
No, never mind.
Stop action crocheted.
So
fish.
Dan could not suspend his disbelief.
None of it being. If this was shot, like I said. If this was shot actually in the wintertime and dude's on a tree like that, I was like, damn, dude. Like,
Dan is an expert in snow lore.
Dan, I'll tell you right now.
I said it in the Midwest.
Hey, I said it before and I'll say it again. As the kids say, he's built different.
He's built different.
Dan wants hypothermia.
I do.
Dan wants his man's toes and fingers to turn black and fall off and be gross, making an NC-17 film.
There is a bit towards the end of this movie where there's like a chase sequence. I think that went on maybe 20% too long.
Yes.
And
then the chase scene was like,
moment. It was awesome.
They're traveling down a path. Writing something. I'm not going to spoil what they're writing.
That was reminiscent of James Bond or even or the Return of the Jedi.
The Italian Job or like,
Empire Strikes Back.
And you see them literally go by like a current day for sale sign on the side of the road for some property, and I'm just like, they're not even going to cut that out. They're not even going to bother editing. Yeah, no, I saw that and I was like, oh, that's hilarious because they didn't even care. They're like,
it was funny.
Now, keep in mind that Dan also hyper focuses on that stuff. I thought this movie did everything exactly right. I wouldn't change anything. I don't think anything's wrong with it. I wouldn't cut anything. I wouldn't add anything. I think it's the exact right amount of stuff.
So, Blake, who do you recommend this movie for then? Like general everybody? Like
genuinely
ages?
Everyone. I told my 70-year-old parents, you should watch this. I've told my friends in my improv classes who range from 24 to like 50 something, like, you guys should watch this. It's such a fun movie.
How young would be too young for this movie?
Fetus, because they can't understand it because they're in their belly.
So like neonatal viewers need not apply.
Spark in a father's eye. Or the sperm donor's eye.
Correct.
I made Aaron laugh. Made Aaron laugh. Podcast done.
Brian. Same question to you. Like, how would you recommend this, and to who?
I would recommend this definitely to people who enjoy films because they're going to get the references and also be kind of astonished by what they did with just visual storytelling. I mean, people who want to know how to tell a story just by what's on the screen. This is an amazing teaching device.
Right. Dan, what's your favorite Applejack? No, I'm kidding. Dan, how would you recommend this?
Applejack. It's not bad.
I was going to ask.
It tastes like cider.
Can I have some?
It's heavy cider. It tastes like
syrup.
Syrup is basically what it is. But
How about that on my
it's just
pancakes?
You don't like meat. I don't know if you'd like applejack.
I'll like it on my pancakes.
So Dan, are you in agreement? Like, would you recommend this generally as well?
I'm in agreement with what Brian is saying. If you have some sort of clue about, if you understand that they had a very low budget and what that actually means, and them to be able to pull off the storytelling, I was like, oh, these must not be union actors because they don't say any lines.
No, it's probably their
There's all their friends
over the 2 weeks they shot out in the woods wherever.
Yeah,
they're drinking buddies and fishing buddies.
Correct.
They'll pay them and all the applejack they can drink.
So
the thing is, those animals had such physical comedy and athleticism to do the stunts.
Correct.
Like, they're good at what they
it
do.
was
a lot
the
of
track team.
The track team.
Well,
It was
honestly, they're probably like mimes and clowns, like
Or
that's,
gymnasts.
Like that's maybe, but
Stuntmen.
like.
so when
No,
there's scenes,
seriously, they're probably mimes and clowns. Like they're trained to be comedically hilarious, or they're trained to do big, broad gestures to convey whatever.
or
emotion
maybe they're just the
feeling.
local sports team mascots.
All right, I'll just stop talking. It's fine. I try to be serious for
No,
once.
I
and
mean,
no one's gonna let me.
Blake makes a good point. Like, this is true. Like, they sell slapstick comedy, and they do it by moving their body around in space in a certain way without hurting themselves.
Without making any dialogue.
Yeah.
That too.
Without going, whoa, or I'm falling. Like it's just
I mean, there's grunting and stuff, and there's
From him,
there's
mostly.
sound.
it's all him.
Okay, soundtrack.
Yes.
There's obviously
Brian's doing the
zero
soundtrack.
music or sound being performed or made within the movie.
Didn't they play music?
Right. And that actually helped with the low budgetness.
Correct.
Because they didn't have to record anything in sync with the video, and he could just create it in post-production later.
Yeah, all the post
Which
production
he
stuff.
spent 2 years doing.
Yeah,
Brian, you said there was a certain
collection
library where he was able to license music exactly for the specific sample that he was using. Do you remember, like, what was the name of that service? And
So I mean, there are several, but I saw in the credits he used the DeWolf music
DeWolf.
library.
That's it.
And that's a pretty well known. It's called a needle drop music service. So
Nice.
you pay for
you
what
pay
you use.
every time you drop the needle on the record.
Yeah.
So every time you use a music cue, the way it works, everybody, is you tell them, "Hey, I'm looking for this epic score with a lot of violins," and they'll send you a sample. Well, samples probably digitally now of 20 things that meet that criteria,
Right.
and you listen to them, and your editor will put it up against picture and see which works best.
So the music in this film, I don't think we've really mentioned it here, but the music in this film is excellently chosen. There was a couple of spots where it even sold the humor of like referencing like a 1960s swords and sandals Roman epic.
Yeah.
The music like really suggests and sells the joke.
Mm-hmm. But when you go over the top to really sell, like, look how important this might actually be, but it's not really that important. It's very silly.
Right. In a couple places for comedic effect, they used this really epic score, and it was really minor action.
It's him like,
a mecha of beavers, giant mecha robot.
oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, there's a
That's a
mecha.
spoiler.
There's
Absolutely a
there's
spoiler.
a beaver robot in this.
Well,
That's a spoiler.
Well, Aaron, even though he never says it, every episode Dan's expertise is spoiling the movie.
of course,
I've had to train
but I'm
him
not going
very
to say
hard.
how it ends.
I've had to train Dan very hard to not ruin Marvel movies when we go to see them.
I'm amazed
And
we
he's
still
finally
have
learned.
listeners. All right, so thumbs
Nah,
up.
I skip it now.
There's
whenever
it's
come
fun.
up.
It's a more
thumbs
fun.
up.
I think
Go
this
see it.
is this
You know
is
what? I'm going to grow an extra thumb on my stomach and make it 5.
Oh, there you go.
Gross.
And it hurts really bad, but now I have 3 thumbs up.
So the funny thing is, so this Belching Beaver peanut butter
That's like
is
Total
the beaver
Recall,
holding
man.
up a peanut and a beer with
Quaid.
thumbs up. You know. Anyway, so this is the time on the podcast that we're going to switch over and talk about beers for a moment or 3.
but not Applejack.
We're not going to talk about Applejack. We'll
We'll
not
drink
try
Applejack
that.
for a movie about beer.
I have some upstairs. We can try it if we want to later on, but not right now.
Does anybody make Orange Jack?
No.
Can you make orange Jack?
Pineapple,
With this
maybe? I don't know.
Well,
That'd be
I'm
kind of
curious if
weird.
the citrus would ruin it.
Guava
Probably
Jack.
the acid
I mean,
in it would
I'll
probably
drink it.
ruin it.
All right.
Because
Anyway.
apple is very sweet, no like real non-offensive fruit. That's why I imagine like orange would be tough because citrus and acid would be hard on the alcohol.
I like only offensive fruits. Banana Jack for me.
All right. Hundreds of Beavers.
banana Jack.
Great film. As mentioned before, I was with Blake over at a local bottle shop on North Mississippi Avenue called Bridgetown Beer House. And we found Alpine Terror Black Lager from Oak Union. Oak Union opened up, I think, last year.
To be fair,
before.
you probably found it and I was petting a dog.
Yeah. This is a black lager. It doesn't have any specific things on the can, or does it have some link?
Oh, it sure does. It's got some marketing copy.
Read it like the Beavers.
Black lager. Alpine Terror is brewed with German and American malts, Hercules and Pearl hops, 3470 yeast, and pure Pacific Northwest water. Brews from Krampus.
Yes.
Hey, Dan.
Yes.
What does the 3470 yeast mean?
So that is either the number identifier of the yeast from the company they got it from, or it is a house yeast that they have made and or used, or it
like a ratio thing.
Yeah, I don't
like 2% milk sort of deal.
No, I think that's just the name of it.
Oh, okay.
There's
like
like 1,000 different strains of yeast, and like some of them are used in baking, some of them are used in brewing.
So I know some people use a certain kind of yeast for sprinkling on popcorn.
Right? Yeah, you can add nutritional like a yeast protein, nutritional yeast. But these yeasts are all slightly different, and they metabolize in a slightly different way, and they make kind of a slightly different output of like alcohol. I mean, it's all alcohol, but they can also like do other things that will subtly impact the flavor. And also they've got different levels of hardiness of like how much alcohol in their environment can they tolerate before they die off. So you get some that are very sensitive to alcohol, they die off kind of early, and some of that sugar is going to be left over, not converted into the alcohol.
Yeah.
And so you get a sweeter drink at the end of that. Versus if it's a more hardy and robust yeast, it can hang out with alcohol and not die from it, and it will convert more of that sugar. Just keep eating and making even more alcohol, so you get a drier, less sweet thing at the end.
Interesting. Well, that was a great question, Brian. Thank you for asking it.
Oh, of course.
Wait, I thought this was your question.
I'm gaslighting the audience.
Oh, you were gaslighting me.
It's all right.
Well, to do better.
Good grief.
All right, so
no, that was an excellent answer. Thank you, sir.
Additional,
I learned so much.
5.2%, 24 IBUs, so not terribly bitter. It's a black lager. I mean, it's not meant to be super hoppy. What I found that said Hallertau and Mittelfrüh are Hallertau, Mittelfrüh, and Pearl, which are basically German hops. I'm not sure because they printed on the can a different one, which it uses. I'm assuming it's, the German hops that they talk about on the can are probably what they use and not what I have. But they also say Weyermann Pils, Munich Type 1, Vienna, Kira Munich Type 2, Crawford Special Type 2, and Bryce Black Prince. So the Bryce is a American strain that's super dark roasted. So it's like 300 or 400 Lovibond, super dark.
This beer feels kind of roasty, malty. It's pretty. I don't want to use the word intense, but like it is.
There's a sharpness to it.
It's got a lot of roast. Like if you like coffee and that kind of
dark brown sugar, caramel, like almost a date,
almost
like
burnt.
stone fruit burnt.
Yeah,
I think the date part of it is what really, it didn't sell me on it completely. I like a coffee taste, but I don't love that kind of sweet. I can appreciate it, but it's not really my palate.
I think I'm like the yin yang on here because I like that kind of date fruit, like dark, sort of sweet, but coffee not so much. Like, so I like that. I think we both like the beer about as much as each other, but like, I like it for different reasons. Yep,
it's clean.
It's like we finish each other's
thoughts.
Should have sandwiches, Aaron. Thanks for Arrested Development.
I thought you meant sentences, and I was going to say thoughts to be a.
Should have said sandwiches.
Okay, so
I wasn't going to say sandwiches.
Locally produced. They're distributing a lot of different cans. They've ramped up their production, I think, somewhat, and they're doing, I think, a really good job. We've had a few of their beers on previous podcasts. I've not had anything bad from them. Big shout out to a guy who's making good beer in the local area and making something that isn't offensive, because there's a lot of places that they put so much different product out.
They go
for an extreme reaction and don't really care about if it's good or bad. Just reaction's reaction.
So a lot of decent lighter malts, some good mouthfeel. It's a little thin, a little roast, good stuff.
Brian, how'd you like it?
I liked it just fine, but as we will find out, I didn't like it as much as the second.
Spoilers, take it easy.
Belching that beaver.
But I would also say that it kind of goes well with the first part of the movie.
Sure.
Why is that?
And that is because I found it a little bit thin, so we weren't really quite into the story.
Okay.
Quite into the main character's arc. He was still kind of a neophyte trying to level up from 0 to first level.
The roast tastes like adversity.
Yes.
Yes.
That's why it says Alpine Terror, and it does have Krampus on the can. So it's it's challenging.
And thematically, his first couple trials in the nature, he was up against beavers who screwed him. He was up against rabbits who
he had to
outsmarted
got
him.
the better of him.
He had to figure out how to carve a proper carrot out of wood,
right,
to fool them.
Well, figure out a lot of things. There's 100 different little vignettes in here, and they're all
very funny.
Yeah,
of him trying to figure out hunting, and he never does until he apprentices himself to the master.
and learn.
So kind of handles it pretty well. So I think if you can find this beer, check it out in the local Portland area. I don't think they're distributing beyond that because it's just a nano place. I don't think they have a tap room yet.
But if you're able
props to Oak Union though, they're worth speaking out.
If you're able to get out here, I'd say give it a shot. It's pretty tasty.
Like I said, the other beers we've had from them were really on point. So, props to them for making awesome beer.
All right, so our next selection
is from Belching Beaver Brewing, which is peanut butter milk stout. So this is their milk stout that they added peanut butter later on to because they wanted to make something different.
So the peanut butter is like an adjunct.
Yes,
that was.
Thought about later after they had made the beer, and they're like, "Hey, what can we add to this?"
Well, is the milk also an adjunct? Like
lactose?
Lactose?
Yeah.
Hey, this might be too specific, and there may be no answer for it. Does it say the brand of peanut butter?
It does not.
It's Jiffy.
All right, there is some.
I'm allergic to Jiffy.
Actually, that's copyrighted. We probably should bleep that out.
Oh, there's so many things that you bleep out from me. They're not gonna bleep you out.
Yeah, all right. So there's some marketing copy. So this is 5.3% and 30 IBU.
So this
oily
peanut butter.
This is a peanut butter milk stout.
Troy came up with the idea of combining the flavor of peanut butter with our milk stout, and he nailed it. Don't let the dark color fool you. This beer is delightfully easy to drink with cascading aromas of roasted peanuts, dark chocolate, and coffee. Good times to you, my friend, and welcome to the Beaver family. Cheers, Tom. Serve cold, drink fresh.
Thanks, Can. The Can welcomed us to the family. Now we're part of their family.
I would say there's peanut butter, milk. I also get like a kind of almost like toffee caramel a little bit too. Like
I didn't get as much chocolate that it mentioned. I'm sure it was just added bitterness to the peanut butter sweetness. I got a lot of peanut butter.
Yeah. So
a lot of peanut butter, but it's a very tasty beer.
If you like Reese's peanut butter cups, think of a dark chocolate version of that.
Which they probably make because they've gone nuts on candy bars.
So this has
they make whatchamacallits and Whoozy Whatsits.
Yeah, so this has got rolled oats and lactose to add to the mouthfeel. Mm-hmm. So this isn't a big-bodied beer, but it coats the tongue like a coat.
Well, is it stout?
It's furry.
Like a hoodie.
Would it be like a beaver coat?
A beaver mascot coat, yes.
Oh my gosh, you guys.
A beaver pelt that he wears.
Like a human skin.
Blake. We're not talking about taxidermy.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about.
Okay, we're talking about peanut butter. We're talking about peanut butter.
Hannibal Lecter.
So I think of stouts as being, kind of intense beers, kind of more robust flavors, really great for drinking over the winter.
Yep.
Kind of warming. This, to me, feels like it's a little bit thinner, lighter. And I think maybe it's the lactose that's added, that milk sort of quality to it, makes it feel less heavy to me. But also, man, that peanut butter is just delicious in there. Like it's like almost like a candy bar beer. Like you could have this.
Yeah. There's been beers we've had where, as you sip it, you go, I couldn't do a full can of this. It's real tasty, but it feels too decadent.
So there's things called pastry stouts, which focus on the sweetness and the flavors that are associated to that sweetness, be it a fruit or something. The term refers to the level of sweetness and residual sugars that are left over, really, really high residual sugar.
I'm sorry, which term?
Pastry stout.
Oh, pastry. Thank you. Okay.
I thought you were razzing him.
No, I honestly was like
pastry stout.
I honestly was kind of zoned out.
I was
not sure where we are right now.
This is not a pastry stout.
The last thing I remember is us talking about the movie.
Well, there's a little bitterness in this, which kind of tones down the sweetness.
Really? I didn't get any bitter.
It balances.
So granted, we all have different palates.
So the 2014 World Beer Championships, which I'd not heard of, this got a silver medal. So this is an award-winning beer.
So it didn't win.
It didn't win.
Run-up's the first loser, son.
This is a loser.
This is a loser beer, just like the Beavers in the movie. In the end,
yeah, they're losers too.
They're losers because they go to the moon, to the moon and back.
As Ricky Bobby's father, played by Gary Cole, said, "If you ain't first, you're last." And then he's pointed out later, "Oh hell, so I was high on PCP when I said that."
All right, so thoughts on this beer?
This was a fantastic choice. I love this beer selection. I'm going to be honest. We try a lot of different beers here, and for me, not being a beer expert, really, it can be hard for me to remember after the fact, like which specific beer I had at any given time for which movie. This beer is exceptional in the sense that, like, oh yeah, I remember this peanut butter beer. I remember really enjoying it. I remember it being distinct of stouts, which is a category I don't typically gravitate to necessarily.
That's true.
Like Brian, like I think you also really enjoyed this one, right?
I really enjoyed this. I tend to like stouts a little bit more anyway, but I find the stouts I like most have a little flavor to them, like peanut butter, and there's
a little fruit or something.
Yeah, a little something other than
something.
This is just a heavy dark
something
beer.
beyond the roast flavor.
Yeah,
I'm glad we had two different beers with this. I'm almost curious if it would have been better if we drank two of these over the course of the movie.
You think this matched the movie that much better?
I think so. I honestly also think a flavorful lager would have which is, I guess, an oxymoron, would have matched this movie pretty well. Like the movie's pretty easy to match it to pair a beer with. Like it's anything too sharp or too bland wouldn't really work, but there's a wide range of flavors that would work with this movie. I think this beer, I would have done two of these, maybe 3 or 17 with this movie.
Do you think a really hoppy IPA would have actually gone with this?
I don't think so.
Non-bitter, and I was hoping that both of these had very low bitter profiles.
Yeah, I'd lean more with a more intense movie for a hoppy IPA. Like the movie wasn't intense. Like there were stakes. There were stakes in this movie. There were stakes,
but
they were never.
It was kind of comic and enjoyable and entertaining.
Yeah. Exactly. You were never concerned for the main character. Like, oh, look at him go now.
So the level of drama is like watching someone play pinball.
No, a level of drama is higher than that.
Not the way I play.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, because I know that you get into it. I get into it.
Oh, dude, I go nuts. I tilt the thing. I get yelled at.
Yeah, it's like I break the machine.
He's a beaver wizard. There has to be a twist because the beaver wizard's got such a supple wrist.
So if you're not going to be able to find either of these beers, which is quite possible because they don't really
you're listening in
that well.
Don't we have someone who listens in Dublin or whatever?
I don't know, but
we've got listeners all over the world.
Yeah,
and
we're glad name them all.
A lot of Canadians. They'll probably love this film.
I think
Canada, we appreciate you. Thank you for these exports of fantastic media.
Yes. Yum.
And find some interesting beers to have with it. I would say do not find a hoppy beer with this. This is not a hoppy beer movie.
Don't drink Bud Light with it. Bud Light's for Top Gun.
Yeah, something cheap. This is not a cheap movie to watch.
It's an inexpensive movie.
It's an inexpensive movie, but I mean, it's not a cheap movie. You know what I mean?
As an intellectual property, it's a very expensive film.
Yes. It requires you to have at least some cultural knowledge of things in the past, like as we mentioned, video games. Like you have that as a reference,
or early cinema,
vaudeville kind of. You know, if you've seen any of the original, like The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, or like any of those original old comedy TV shows, it borrows some of that level of short humor, and then it moves on to the next thing.
That's additive, though. Like you don't need all those references to enjoy it.
It's enjoyable, not without the intellectual stimulation.
Right.
But
if it's there,
if you notice it, you know, it's this other really intelligent level.
There's another layer.
You're impressed by the
like watching a later MCU film,
like Charlie Chaplin playing Frogger.
Okay,
Mario Brothers.
So I know that it's been a little while since we watched it. What was your favorite? What's the most memorable thing you remember from it?
Aaron's crying right
He's
now.
I want to say it's a spoiler, but just the ingenuity. I refuse to spoil because because I am watching out for our listeners and their interests to enjoy this movie.
Listen to later. I've already seen it.
So no, I think my favorite is when our protagonist discovers the extent of the Beavers' building plans and the ambitions of their project.
Yes,
that is hilarious. Lab coats and everything. Like it's so beyond what you expect, and it is phenomenally a clever idea and extremely funny. So I'm going to say that's kind of my favorite moment of the film, which is maybe like 4/5 of the way through. So Blake,
this isn't not to be contrarian, but I think my favorite is like the opening song.
That's a good song
because you go in going if you never saw the trailer, which I purposely did not watch. I only watched this because I've been wanting to, and Aaron said we should watch it for the podcast, and I'm sitting there going, all right, I'm digging this. And then the song ends. I'm like, what is going on? Which is how silly the song is. It's all about this man who just drinks applejack all day. He loves making applejack and has all these distilleries. There's lumberjacks everywhere. And then you see a couple of beavers running around. The opening just song is so fun to me. It's such a great way to open a movie with no dialogue. It's a lot of singing and then grunting and animal noises and sound effects.
Ryan?
I think I like the.
All right, great. Dan? No, I'm sorry.
I think I like the fur trapper's daughter as this kind of.
Well, we all like the fur trapper's daughter.
Well,
I mean,
as a kind of like a femme fatale.
Watch for the stripper pole, people. Watch out for the stripper pole.
Especially that scene.
That actually was really good, really funny.
Very, very funny moment.
Yeah.
And she's a very practiced, what is it when you chop an animal up for all of its parts?
Butcher?
Well, she's a butcher, but no,
she pulls all those anatomically.
She does the organs
anatomically incorrect parts out like a champ.
Yes. So I was going to say I have a couple of really sort of favorite moments, and one of them is the stripper pole moment.
We all picked one.
But I would say, and then we didn't really talk about this.
I forgot about the stripper pole. That would have
video game. I think you're gonna say you forgot about the thing you said.
Video game reference of him playing Frogger jumping across logs as he's going through the dam.
Oh yes,
that's right.
And it's just like. That's freaking hilarious. And then they're like, oh, he's going to pull the lever and he'll go down instead of going straight forward to meet the bad guys. And he's like, ah, ha, ha. And it's like he has to eat it. If I was going to say, if they could have cut anything down, that whole like 15 minutes of the film of him going through this weird chase scene. And it's just like,
I mean, there's even references to Indiana Jones. The coal cart.
Dan, would you erase part of the Mona Lisa? No, you wouldn't. I'm not going to answer for you. Leave it as is.
So, Blake, this is a perfect movie in its entirety.
Yeah, this is 1,000 out of 100.
Okay.
All right.
Quentin Tarantino can go kick rocks.
You've heard it here first. I wonder what Tarantino would think of this film.
Martin Scorsese can go die. This movie's so good.
Wow.
All right, so obviously some 3 thumbs up.
Who made
for
Casablanca? Franco Baxali or whatever.
So find some interesting beers to drink. If you're not hoppy, that's our one request, dear listener.
Not too hoppy, not too bland. It has to be
bland.
like the Little Bear's porridge, just right.
Just right. Find some meat or some applejack or something sweet. Because that was obviously what he was drinking in it. Was his whole thing was, oh, I found my applejack.
You drink it while turning your AC way up and wearing just underpants and just freeze while you drink it.
Freeze. I'm like, that's why you drink applejack, so you don't feel the cold. Yes.
Well, as always, the views and opinions expressed here by our hosts are not those of any corporation or whatever. How's that go, Dan?
The opinions expressed during the taping of this recording are those of the hosts. That's what you meant to say.
That is what I meant to say.
But that's okay. Just find this movie if you can. I don't know what streaming services it's on right now, but I'm sure it's out there. Mm-hmm. Find your local, funny, cool indie.
It is playing on screens here in Portland right now.
Is it really?
At least this last weekend, yes.
Oh, wow. So
we could go and cheer for it.
We could.
Well, I imagine the licensing fee is pretty low.
Yeah.
They just want to get eyeballs on it.
Yeah, it's a fun film.
The licensing fee is 2 beaver pelts, Blake.
That's so expensive. Where are we going to find beavers?
And that's going to get you a baseball bat.
Hell yeah, now I'm on board.
Yes.
Then you can catch some raccoons.
Yes. So yeah, thanks for hanging out, everybody. Check this film out. Find some interesting things to drink. This is kid appropriate. I mean, as far as I can tell,
100%.
The violence is very funny.
Cartoony.
The cutting up of fake animals is very taken tongue in cheek and not realistic in any way, shape, or form. It has some sad moments.
There's some plush intestines that they're pulling out.
I don't want to recommend the name, but if anyone wants to go see it without stealing it, it's on a video service named after a wetland forest that is more important than the book selling delivery service it's named after.
Okay. So it is on a major streaming service, so you can figure that out.
It's also on YouTube
just Google
with
it.
ads.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Okay, I'm fine with that.
So just
YouTube sucks, but not as bad as Amazon.
So hundreds of beavers, and it's spelled out hundreds of beavers.
I would suggest watching it with at least a couple other people.
Yes,
because it amplifies the fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In a group.
A couple of multi-sweet beers and a couple of multi-sweet friends.
Yes. Oh. All right. Well, thanks for hanging, everybody.
Deeply cynical friends.
Or Blake.
That too. All of the above.
All right. Thanks for joining us, listeners. Until next time, watch out for those wolves. They'll get you if you're not careful.
You can find me at Stuff Blake Does on Substack. Bye.
Wow. This is Brian signing off. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Yeah. And sometimes you should drink water or not, but it's all
I drank 2 glasses. You can leave me alone now.
All right.
Hydrate or dehydrate?
Hydrate or dehydrate.
Oh, yeah. Whatever Dan said.